She thought her harsh words online were just a joke, until he showed up at her family reunion the very next day. What happened next changed everything. It was a warm Saturday morning in the quiet suburb of Willow Creek. The sun had barely risen over the tree-lined streets, casting a golden hue on the freshly mowed lawns, when Emily Walker sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor, scrolling through her phone. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, a mischievous smirk tugging at her lips. She was bored, like most weekends, with nothing to do but catch up on social media. Her latest target? The new neighbor, Mr. Thomas Reed. Emily had seen him moving in the day before, an older man in his late 40s, carrying boxes into a modest house at the end of the cul-de-sac. He had a kind face, but there was something about his quiet demeanor and simple clothes that Emily found dull. And so, in the reckless confidence of youth, she posted a comment under the neighborhood Facebook page. "That neighbor looks ugly. Who even dresses like that anymore?" Within minutes, reactions began to roll in. A few friends chuckled, sending laughing emojis, while others replied with shocked faces. Emily's heart raced, not with fear, but with the thrill of attention. She laughed to herself, thinking, he'll never see this. It's just online. But Emily didn't know Thomas Reed. She didn't know that he wasn't just a quiet, ordinary man. Behind the glasses and the worn-out sweater, he carried a presence that could command a room, a demeanor that drew respect, and a history of resilience that Emily couldn't even imagine. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. Emily went about her usual weekend chores, tidying her room, helping her mom in the kitchen, and preparing for the big family reunion scheduled for that afternoon. The Walker family reunion was an annual tradition, held every August, with extended relatives traveling from across the state. Emily, despite being 22, was a social butterfly of sorts, always chatting, laughing, and making sure her cousins remembered the latest jokes or online trends. She didn't think about Thomas Reed again, until she stepped out into the backyard that afternoon. The Walker family reunion was in full swing. The aroma of grilled burgers and corn on the cob filled the air. Children ran across the lawn, screaming with laughter as adults mingled near picnic tables covered with red and white checkered tablecloths. Emily's parents were busy greeting relatives, exchanging hugs and catching up on stories from the past year. Emily adjusted her sunglasses and carried a tray of lemonade toward a group of cousins, feeling the buzz of excitement. She laughed at a story her older cousin, Rachel, was telling, not noticing the subtle change in the atmosphere as a stranger approached the yard. It wasn't until she heard a calm, deep voice say, "Emily Walker," that her smile faltered. She looked up, and there he was. Thomas Reed. Standing at the edge of the backyard, a faint smile on his face, eyes steady and unblinking. He was wearing a simple blue shirt and khaki pants, nothing flashy, but somehow commanding. There was a quiet confidence about him, a presence that filled the space without shouting. Emily froze. Her mind raced. How did he even know my name? Her cousin, Rachel, nudged her lightly, whispering, Emily, do you know him?" Emily shook her head, forcing a casual smile. No, not really." Thomas stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. "I live at the end of the street. Thought I'd join the reunion. Seems like a friendly neighborhood." Emily's stomach sank. Friendly neighborhood? He must have seen the post. There was no way he hadn't. She had laughed, thinking her words were harmless. She had laughed, thinking nobody would take them seriously. But now, standing here in front of her, Thomas Reed seemed calm, but there was an intensity in his eyes that made Emily feel small, exposed, and foolish. Her cousins exchanged curious glances. Emily's younger brother, Max, looked bewildered. "Mom, who's that guy?" Her mother, oblivious to the tension brewing, waved politely. "Hello. You must be our new neighbor. Welcome. Come, join us." Emily forced a tight smile. "Yeah, welcome, Thomas." Her voice cracked slightly, betraying the anxiety she tried to hide. Thomas's gaze flicked toward Emily, a knowing glint in his eyes. "Thank you. I heard this family likes to have fun." Emily laughed nervously, trying to brush it off. "Yeah, we do. Always loud, always chaotic. You'll get used to it." But Thomas didn't move away. He lingered near the buffet table, subtly positioning himself where he could watch the interactions without intruding. Emily felt a growing sense of dread. Her cheeks burned as she recalled her comment online. Ugly, ugly, ugly. The word echoed in her mind. She had thought it harmless, a fleeting joke in the endless scroll of social media. But now, she realized just how public, and permanent, words could be. Throughout the afternoon, Thomas mingled with Emily's extended family, quietly observing, exchanging polite conversation with her uncles and aunts. Emily tried to focus on other things, the potato salad, the laughter of her cousins, the music playing softly from the speakers. Yet, she could feel his gaze occasionally landing on her, calm, steady, and almost judging. The tension was invisible to everyone else, but for Emily, it was suffocating. Her phone buzzed with notifications from the neighborhood Facebook page. She glanced at it and froze. Comments were piling in about the reunion. "Did anyone see Thomas Reed at the Walker reunion?" one person typed. "I think Emily's neighbor showed up," another replied. Emily's stomach twisted. She had laughed at his looks online. She had called him ugly. And now, he had walked right into her life, into the center of her family, and she had no idea what he would do next. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the yard, Emily tried to engage in conversation with her cousins. But every laugh, every word, felt forced. She could hear the faint clink of plates and the hum of chatter, but her mind was consumed with the inevitability of confrontation. Finally, it happened. Thomas approached Emily, calm, deliberate, stopping just a few feet away. "Emily, I saw your comment." His voice was steady, not angry, not mocking, just direct. Emily's mouth went dry. She opened it to say something, anything, but nothing came out. Thomas continued, "I won't lie. It stung. But I'm not here to make this about that." Emily blinked, confusion and guilt washing over her. "Why, you're not mad," she stammered. He shook his head slowly. "I'm not here to dwell on the past. I'm here to meet the real people in this family. But I do want to make one thing clear," he paused, letting his words settle. "Words have power, Emily. They can wound more than you realize. And sometimes, the smallest actions online can echo far beyond your screen." Emily swallowed hard, guilt and fear knotting in her stomach. She had been reckless, thoughtless, and suddenly, it all felt very real. The rest of the afternoon passed in a tense blur. Emily couldn't escape Thomas's presence, though he wasn't confrontational. He simply existed in the same space, an unspoken reminder of the mistake she had made. And Emily realized something that day: the world she lived in online, where words felt fleeting and consequences invisible, was not the real world. And now, she would have to face the consequences of her actions, face to face, in front of her family, with no option to delete, edit, or hide. By evening, the reunion began to wind down. Plates were cleared, children were herded into cars, and relatives began to say their goodbyes. Emily lingered near the patio, her hands fidgeting with a napkin. Thomas approached once more, his expression calm, his presence commanding without effort. "I'll be moving in closer to your street soon," he said lightly. "Hopefully, we can start fresh. But remember, Emily, everyone deserves respect, even online." Emily nodded, swallowing back tears. She had learned a lesson she would never forget. Words mattered. Actions mattered. And sometimes, even the smallest jest could ripple into consequences far larger than she had ever imagined. As Thomas walked away, Emily felt a strange mix of relief and apprehension. Relief, because he hadn't yelled or embarrassed her in front of her family. Apprehension, because she knew this was just the beginning. The comment she had made would linger in her mind, and perhaps in the neighborhood, longer than she could have anticipated. That night, as Emily lay in bed, she stared at the ceiling, replaying the day over and over. She realized something crucial: her actions, her words, and her character could no longer hide behind screens or hashtags. They were real. And reality, as she had learned today, had a way of showing up when you least expected it. And little did Emily know, the encounter with Thomas Reed was only the first twist in a story that would challenge her, humble her, and ultimately change her in ways she could never have imagined. The next morning, Willow Creek was quiet. The sun peeked over the horizon, spilling golden light across the neatly lined streets, but for Emily Walker, there was no peace. Her mind replayed the previous day like a relentless loop. Thomas Reed's calm, steady gaze haunted her thoughts. His words, about respect, consequences, and the unseen weight of online remarks, echoed louder than any shout or insult ever could. Emily's family had long since moved on from the reunion, laughing about the burnt edges of the grilled burgers and teasing one another about childhood stories. But Emily felt like she was carrying a burden, one that refused to be shrugged off or ignored. She had laughed online, thoughtlessly, at a man she barely knew, and now, he had entered her life in a way she could never have predicted. As she walked to her kitchen for a cup of coffee, she noticed a note slipped under the front door. Her heart skipped a beat. The handwriting was neat, precise, and unfamiliar. "Emily, I hope you are reflecting on our encounter yesterday. Life teaches lessons in mysterious ways. See you soon. T." A chill ran down her spine. Thomas Reed was not done. He had made it clear, subtly but unmistakably, that he had taken notice. Emily's first instinct was to delete the comment, block him online, anything to erase the discomfort. But the words on that note carried weight. She couldn't undo what she had done. She couldn't hide. By mid-morning, the neighborhood was alive with the usual Saturday buzz, lawnmowers humming, children squealing, and neighbors greeting each other warmly. Emily tried to focus on her chores, but her phone buzzed incessantly. Notifications from social media flooded in, neighbors tagging Thomas's name, curious about his appearance at the Walker family reunion. Emily's stomach churned. Her joke had spread further than she could have imagined, and now it seemed everyone knew. Trying to escape, she decided to take a walk. She needed air, clarity, and distance from the chaos she had unleashed. As she walked past her neighbors' homes, she noticed Thomas tending his garden, pruning delicate flowers with careful attention. There was a serenity to him, a patience Emily had not anticipated. Despite the tension between them, he seemed grounded. Emily hesitated, then approached cautiously. "Hi, Thomas." Her voice was soft, unsure. He looked up and smiled gently. "Morning, Emily. Beautiful day, isn't it?" Yes, it is." She swallowed hard. The words she wanted to say were caught in her throat. Instead, she admitted, almost whispering, I'm sorry for what I said online. It was thoughtless, cruel, and I didn't think." Thomas nodded, listening, his expression calm. "Acknowledging your mistake is the first step. It's easy to forget that online words affect real people. But apologies mean something when they are sincere. I believe yours is." Emily felt a mixture of relief and continued fear. Relief, because he wasn't angry in the way she had feared. Fear, because she knew trust, respect, and humility could not be repaired overnight. Thomas had made her face a truth she had never wanted to confront. Her words had consequences, and consequences had a way of showing up in life when least expected. Over the next few days, Emily noticed subtle changes. She saw Thomas in the neighborhood, tending to his lawn or helping carry groceries for elderly neighbors. Each time she observed him, she realized something astonishing. He wasn't defined by her harsh judgment. He was more than appearances, more than a passing comment online. He was a man of integrity, patience, and resilience. Emily's guilt slowly transformed into curiosity. She wanted to know more about the man she had insulted, not for revenge or ridicule, but to understand the depth she had missed in her hasty judgment. One afternoon, she found the courage to knock on his door. Thomas answered, surprised but welcoming. "Emily? What brings you here?" I wanted to talk," she said, nervously twisting her hands. "About what I said. About everything." He gestured for her to come in. Inside, the house was modest, clean, and filled with simple but meaningful decor, family photos, books stacked carefully, and plants thriving by the windows. It reflected a life of thoughtfulness and care, a life Emily had dismissed in a passing online comment. They sat down, and Emily spoke honestly, vulnerably. She confessed her insecurities, her tendency to judge others superficially, and the recklessness of her online behavior. Thomas listened patiently, occasionally nodding, occasionally offering quiet observations. "Emily," he said finally, "we all make mistakes. The important part is learning from them. You have the chance now to grow, to choose words that build rather than hurt. That is more powerful than any apology." Emily's eyes filled with tears. For the first time, she truly understood the weight of responsibility, not just for her own reputation, but for the feelings and dignity of others. She had mocked him, yes, but she had also opened the door to change, understanding, and growth. In the days that followed, Emily began to transform her online behavior. She deleted hurtful comments, refrained from impulsive posts, and started sharing positive stories about her neighbors and the community. Her friends noticed the change, and some even followed her example. Slowly, her online presence became a reflection of her evolving values rather than fleeting entertainment. As for Thomas, he continued his quiet presence in the neighborhood. Sometimes, he and Emily would exchange smiles or brief conversations. Sometimes, they shared insights about gardening, books, or life. There was no animosity, no lingering resentment, only a mutual respect forged from an unlikely, awkward, and unforgettable encounter. And Emily learned a profound lesson, that humanity, patience, and integrity are far more important than appearances. That words, once spoken, cannot be erased, but they can be redeemed through honesty, humility, and understanding. One evening, as she sat on her porch reflecting on the events, Emily realized how close she had come to regret and isolation, and how much she had grown in just a few days. She thought about the note Thomas had left under her door, the reunion, and the quiet strength he had displayed. And she smiled, softly, knowing that sometimes, the people we judge most harshly have the power to teach us the lessons we need most. From that moment on, Emily vowed to live with awareness, kindness, and empathy. She understood that reputation, respect, and relationships were built not on superficial judgment, but on sincere action and integrity. And as she drifted off to sleep, She whispered a quiet promise to herself: never again would she underestimate the power of words, or the strength of a neighbor who walked into her life when she least expected it.